There's a particular kind of loneliness that only shows up once you've gotten everything you asked for. Nobody warns you about it growing up. You're told that success fixes things, that the fear goes away once people start recognizing your face, once the job is secure, once you're finally, undeniably, made it. Nobody mentions that the fear sometimes just changes shape and moves in for good. In a trailer on a set in Vancouver, a 25-year-old man, 6'4", built like nothing could touch him, walks off camera in the middle of a scene, sits down, and starts crying. He couldn't tell you exactly why. He has a hit show. Strangers know his name at airports. By any measurement a stranger could check, he's arrived. A doctor would later put a word to it: depression. Everything else in this story, the demons, the cowboy hat, the friendship that outlasted a TV network, the comeback nobody saw coming, sits downstream of that one afternoon. Jared Padalecki learned early, and the hard way, that having what you're supposed to want and actually being okay are two different things that don't always show up in the same room. This is the story of what he did next. This isn't a credits list. A search engine can give you that in 4 seconds. This is about a kid from San Antonio who got very good, very young at sounding composed, and then spent 20 years discovering that composure and okay are not the same thing. It's about an actor who nearly lost the role that would define him because he guessed wrong about what the room wanted. It's about a TV show that stopped behaving like a job somewhere around season 2 and started behaving like a family instead. And it's about a man who, every time the industry has said no to his face, has answered with some version of, "Fine, I'll build something else." By the end, the monsters in the cowboy hat will feel almost beside the point. What's left is a guy who keeps choosing to fight for whoever's standing next to him. Early life. Jared Tristan Padalecki was born July 19, 1982, in San Antonio, Texas, to Gerald Padalecki, a tax accountant, and Sherry Padalecki, a high school English teacher. He had an older brother, Jeff, and a younger sister, Megan. The childhood that produced him was, by most descriptions, almost defiantly normal. Bikes, skateboards, basketball, the standard inventory of suburban scrapes. He grew up in a house with a teacher and an accountant. Precision and language, basically, sitting across from each other at the dinner table every night. Maybe that's where some of it started. At 12, he won a school monologue competition, and something about holding a room's attention stuck. His father encouraged him to chase it. He started acting lessons, and around the same time, almost as a parallel track, he found something he was even better at: competitive debate. In 1998, he and partner Chris Cardenas won the National Forensic League's national championship in duo interpretation, the closest thing competitive speech has to an Olympic gold.
I make money because I'm a moneymaker, Eugene! I'm a moneymaker! Shut up! Shut up!
2 years later, he was named a candidate for the Presidential Scholars Program. Debate doesn't just teach a teenager to talk well. It teaches a particular kind of performance, staying composed under pressure, thinking 3 moves ahead, never letting the room see the seams. It's a useful skill. It's also, occasionally, a trap. The same instinct that would later anchor him through 15 years of network television was the instinct that taught him to look fine long after he'd stopped being fine. He had a full academic scholarship sitting at the University of Texas at Austin. The safe version of this story ends there. Home state, known outcome, a life that makes sense on paper. He didn't take it. After graduating James Madison High School in 2000, he moved to Los Angeles instead, into a profession that comes with no guarantees of any kind. This is the part of the story where it almost doesn't happen at all. In the early 2000s, there was an unwritten rule for young men auditioning in Hollywood. Be brooding, be pensive, look like something is eating you alive. That was the going currency. Jared, fresh off playing the sweet, unguarded Dean Forrester on Gilmore Girls, walked into his audition for a new horror pilot called Supernatural and tried to give the room what he assumed it wanted: moody, closed off, performing troubled. It didn't work. Creator Eric Kripke wasn't buying it. What almost cost him the role of Sam Winchester wasn't a lack of talent. It was a wrong guess about the assignment. His own manager had to call the production and essentially correct the record. "You've got the wrong read on this guy. He's not a brooding mess. He's a National Merit Scholar who missed one question on his SATs and won a national debate title. Let him come back and actually be himself. They gave him a second shot. This time, he dropped the tortured anti-hero act and let some of his real intelligence and warmth leak through, which turned out to be precisely what Sam Winchester needed. A bookish, conflicted younger brother who wanted an ordinary life and kept getting dragged back into a family business soaked in things that shouldn't exist. Most people, having barely survived one audition, take the win and move on without looking back. Jared kept something else from it, a quiet, permanent awareness of how easily a future can hinge on someone else's first impression, and how much it matters to have someone in the room willing to argue for the real version of you. That particular lesson didn't stay in 2005. It kept showing up for the next 20 years. Before Supernatural existed, Jared had already assembled a resume that, looking back, reads almost like a sketch of everything he'd eventually become known for. He played Dean Forrester on Gilmore Girls from 2000 to 2005, Rory Gilmore's earnest, working-class first love, and his introduction to a fiercely loyal fan base, years before he ever touched a prop machete. From there, he moved into film with House of Wax, 2005, and a Friday the 13th remake, 2009. Classic 2000 slasher territory that let him test something tougher and more physical than Dean Forrester ever required. Somewhere in between, he turned up in the comedy Cheaper by the Dozen, 2003, briefly sharing a set with Tom Welling, soon to be Smallville's lead, a detail that would feel almost engineered once Supernatural and Smallville ended up airing as sister shows on the same network. Funny enough, Sam Winchester wasn't originally drawn up with Jared in mind at all. Jensen Ackles was the one the production initially circled for the younger brother, but Ackles wanted Dean instead. The two men auditioned for Supernatural on the same day in 2005, sat together in an otherwise empty waiting room, and bonded over Texas roots and the Dallas Cowboys before either of them had read a single line for the producers. What looks from the outside like two actors landing two separate parts on the same afternoon was actually the start of something neither of them clocked yet, a friendship born in a waiting room that would end up outlasting the show itself by years. Supernatural premiered on the WB in September 2005, migrated to the newly formed CW, and turned into something nobody had reason to predict. 15 seasons, 327 episodes, for a while the longest-running scripted series in American network history, and one of the most durable genre shows of its generation. Jared played Sam Winchester opposite Jensen Ackles' Dean, two brothers crossing the American backroads in a '67 Impala, hunting monsters and demons and eventually threats with cosmic stakes, while wrestling underneath all of it with something far less supernatural: grief, loyalty, addiction, and the particular exhaustion of feeling responsible for someone you love. A hit show that runs a long time is one thing. Sam Winchester was never a character who got to sit still inside it. Over 15 years, he was possessed, lost his soul, lived through storylines built explicitly around addiction, and stayed permanently torn between wanting an ordinary life and being constitutionally unable to walk away from his brother. Jared had to keep that internal life breathing for a decade and a half, and the show's mythology kept adding weight rather than easing off it. The timing is the part worth sitting with. Season 3, right when the show found its creative footing and Jared's career was visibly taking off by every outside measure, is exactly when he hit the breaking point from the opening of this video. Walked off set, sat down in the trailer, cried without entirely knowing why. The diagnosis came not long after: clinically depressed. Most people in that position bury it and keep the machine running. Whatever Jared chose to do instead with that diagnosis would end up mattering just as much to his story as anything that happened in front of a camera. Step back far enough across 20 years of choices, and one pattern keeps surfacing. He builds families out of whatever's left standing. Supernatural itself is a story about two brothers who refuse to abandon each other no matter what hell, literal hell in this case, gets thrown at them. Off camera, Jared and Jensen built something that started as two strangers in an empty waiting room and turned into actual siblinghood. They've talked about logging more consecutive time with each other over the years than with their own spouses and kids. Then there's the fandom. SPN Family isn't a marketing phrase the network came up with. It's a community the cast has actively tended for 2 decades, one that Misha Collins has described as functioning like a surrogate family among people who've never met each other. Jared has talked about scrolling through messages from strangers, supporting strangers through actual crises, and calling it one of the more meaningful byproducts of his entire career. And then there's Always Keep Fighting, launched in 2015 after he went public about his depression, built around a simple idea. Nobody dealing with depression, addiction, self-harm, or suicidal thoughts should have to sit with it alone. The campaign started as a t-shirt drive with a modest goal of 1,000 shirts. It sold over 33,000. So, when Walker eventually cast him as Cordell Walker, a widowed father trying to hold a broken family together, it landed less like a stretch and more like recognition. A man whose entire arc is refusing to let the people around him fall apart by themselves. He'd basically been rehearsing that role his whole adult life. Not actor who plays tough guys, actor who, on screen and off, keeps choosing connection over isolation, because he knows, specifically, what isolation almost cost him. Among actors who reach his level of visibility, Jared Padalecki is oddly bad at keeping distance from the people watching him. It doesn't seem to occur to him as an option. He married Genevieve Cortez, who played the demon Ruby on Supernatural. They met on set in 2008, married in February 2010 in Sun Valley, Idaho, Jensen Ackles standing as groomsman, Jared's brother Jeff as best man, and raised 3 children, Thomas, Austin, and Odette, splitting time between Texas and Vancouver. It's a domestic life that reads as almost stubbornly ordinary, set against a job that is anything but. His friendship with Ackles has taken on a kind of mythology of its own in entertainment circles, and not the manufactured press tour version of co-star chemistry. This is the real thing, built on 2 decades of an identical, all-consuming schedule, and choosing each other inside it anyway. They lived together, briefly, in the early years. His relationship to his own struggles is the part that sets him apart, though. Most celebrities disclose a mental health issue once, carefully, in a single sit-down interview, and then move on for good. Jared has gone back to his depression and anxiety again and again, for over a decade, without softening the unglamorous parts, the breakdown in the trailer, the diagnosis, the later moments where he's openly asked fans to support him through a hard stretch. He's also, by every account, genuinely funny, a little goofy even. The guy who dressed as Castiel for Halloween by dropping to his knees to mimic Misha Collins' height. The guy who cooks dinner and posts it. It matters because it complicates the easy version of this story. As of 2026, Jared Padalecki describes himself as pretty tired, and is, somehow, also busier than Walker's cancellation once made it look like he'd be. He's headed back into the Supernatural universe alongside Ackles and Misha Collins for the 5th and final season of Amazon Prime's The Boys, reuniting with Eric Kripke, the same showrunner who, 20 years earlier, almost didn't cast him at all. And he stepped well outside familiar territory for Guarding Stars, a Netflix holiday rom-com with Leighton Meester that wrapped filming in March 2026, set for release later this year. Somewhere in there, life did what life does. In late 2025 and into early 2026, Jared broke his leg, badly enough to cancel scheduled convention appearances, including one in January 2026 while he recovered. When he came back publicly to thank fans for getting him through it, true to form, it wasn't a quick statement. It was, once more, him pointing the gratitude back at the community he spent 2 decades helping build. The kid who won a national debate title by learning to sound unshakable under pressure spent the next 20 years learning something harder. Real strength was never about not breaking down in the trailer. It's about what happens after he walks back out. He didn't just survive 2 decades in an industry built to wear people down to nothing. He spent those 2 decades quietly making sure that the people around him, castmates, fans, strangers writing in because of a t-shirt campaign, never had to get through the hard parts on their own. That's the whole story, really. Not the monsters, not the cowboy hat. Just a guy from San Antonio who kept deciding again and again to keep fighting and to make sure nobody else had to do it alone.